Hi and welcome back to the channel. Today we are discussing Vechain's VET token and the technical analysis. As I get into today's video, smash that like button. If you're new to the channel, subscribe and let's get right down into it. So here we have Vechain paired up with USDT. We're on the 1-day Binance chart and we have come down quite aggressively, right? We can see the white line coming through here. This is the 200-day exponential moving average. We can see the yellow line, that is the 50-day simple moving average, and the blue line coming through is the 50-day exponential moving average. As I covered off in the previous video, we were looking for a death cross to occur here. This is something where we see the smaller averages, the 50 EMA, the 50 SMA, crossing down lower than the longer term average, the 200 EMA. This crossed on the 15th of June. And yeah, we can see obviously we've had more downward price pressure since we've seen that negative cross. This is a death cross. It's one of what it's called. It basically just means that the shorter term moving averages are now lower than the longer term moving averages. Now, obviously, EMAs, SMAs, all moving averages, they're only showing you what's already happened. They're not predicting the future. But there are reactions, emotional reactions that retail investors will have when these events occur. So we did see a little bit of a sell-off here, but I think we're getting close to a reversal for Vechain, at least in the kind of short to medium term. Now, we were in the previous video talking about the price moving down to 2.226 and 2.473. Okay, this is the range down here of our Y wave, and then we're looking for a bounce up into an X wave before we potentially come down a little bit deeper into a final Z wave movement. Now, on the 18th of June, so Tuesday just gone, we did actually wick down to a low of 2.381, meaning that we entered into our range. But I don't think we're done just yet. I still expect us to move down a little bit more before we can kind of say we're done with this correction in this Y wave, and we can get into that kind of relief rally to the upside. Now, I do expect the 50 EMA, the 50 SMA to be resistance for Vechain, right? So as we kind of start to see a little bit of recovery, I'm going to be expecting the 50 EMA, the 50 SMA to be a bit of resistance for the VET token to kind of try to rally past. At the moment, we are currently sat at 3.305 on the EMA and 3.341 on the SMA, with the 200-day EMA sat at 34.15. All of these are going to be big resistance areas for Vechain's price action. If we can get a closed position above the 50 EMA, 50 SMA, that's going to be the first level of confirmation of a reversal. But ultimately, what we're really looking for is a closed position above that 200-day EMA. That's going to be the biggest bullish kind of reversal signal that we can have. Now, Elliott wave theory tells us that we have a little bit more to the downside, so I don't think we're done just yet. I do expect us to move down maybe a little bit lower than we were on Tuesday. Hopefully that isn't the case, but I think that's the most likely outcome, is that we still have one more drop here to come before we get into the X wave. Now, I think we could potentially be testing out 2.2, 0.3, something to that effect, and then we'll be looking for, anywhere really between 25 and 30% rally, but it does depend on the EMAs, SMAs as to kind of where they do progress down to during this moment of volatility for Vechain's VET token. Okay, so I think it's not all bad news. We're right in the point of reversal. We've seen pretty significant slippage since we had a really good run on Vechain. At the moment, we've come down a pretty nice 56.71%, which is actually better than many altcoins out there. Some altcoins, specifically some layer 2s that I've been accumulating, have dropped over 60%. So Vechain's actually holding up in line with the rest of the crypto market and potentially more favorably than some. So, it's not all bad. Now, if I go ahead and throw on smart money concepts here, we can see that equilibrium is sat significantly higher at 3.8 cent. There's lots of selling pressure up here. And all these areas of resistance, the selling pressure is higher than the 200-day EMA. This is obviously going to be really difficult for us to push on through. Don't get me wrong. Things can change. We are in very early stages of this correction. The late stages of this correction, but very early stages of the big bullish market and the run up to the upside. Now, we are still in a bullish structure according to smart money concepts on a macro scale. Okay, as I zoom out here, you can see we have a change of characterization and a break of structure. Basically, these two things confirm our bullish market on a macro scale, even though we're down lower than the 200-day EMA. Okay, so one thing to bear in mind here is that we haven't had any major changes of this characterization during this correction. Okay, and we've kind of went through this in the previous video where the current correction that we are seeing here for Vechain is corrective. We have a lot of overlapping candlesticks and we don't really see those impulsive breakdowns with this with the exception of this minor move that we've seen at the moment. This is an impulsive breakdown at the moment, and that's why I do think we're likely to see further moves to the downside. Now, we do have a strong low down here on smart money concepts, which is incredibly interesting. Okay, a strong low is signaling that we're not likely to get this broken. So it'll be interesting to see which one of these is right. Smart money concepts basically meaning our local low is in and we can now progress upwards, or Elliott wave theory, where we actually do see a little bit more slippage to the downside before we get that next big move to the upside. One of those is right, one of those is wrong. Hopefully we'll find out which one is which in due course. Now, if I bring up our stochastic RSI, you can see the momentum is shifting up to the overbought area, and that is not a good sign on the daily time frame. This momentum being shifted around like this is an indication that there isn't much of an appetite for buying pressure or for buying Vechain right now, signaling that although we've moved up a little bit, it's not sustainable with the momentum being the way that it is. We also overbought on the 8-hour time frame, so expect more volatility. I'm expecting rejection before we get above that mid level here at 50 on the stochastic RSI, and we'll unfortunately probably have that additional lower low to come before we get the significant bounce upwards. If I turn off stochastic RSIs and bring on the divergence indicator, the relative strength index, you can also see down here that it's bounced up a little bit from the oversold area, but is starting to turn down a bit as well over the last couple of days. There's no divergences to be noted here, but we are in bearish territory when it comes to the relative strength index. But a reversal, I think, is coming. It's just a matter of being a little bit more patient before we get that across the line. Now, if I turn that off and bring it in the volume profiles, you can really see that there's an increase when it comes to selling pressure, but there's not really an increase when it comes to buying pressure, not in the same way than what we saw previously over here, for example, where you can see there's an increase in buying pressure. So at the moment we have an increase in selling pressure, not an increase in buying, even though the price is moving upwards, and that is unfortunately a bit of a bearish tell as well. So as you can kind of see here, we have really insignificant amounts of buying pressure to push the price up higher. We are lower than the EMAs. We are, of course, still expecting another move to the downside before we get a bounce, and I do think the bounce will be significant, 25-30%, and then obviously hit resistance and get rejected once more before the market is ready to actually reverse. So for Vechain, there's a lot of things to kind of consider on our daily time frame, and unfortunately many of them are not as positive as we would like them to be at this stage. But like I say, these are all short-term movements. They're not about the bigger macro. If we do roll this up into a weekly time frame, well, you can see that we have got ourselves a bit of a situation on our weekly time frame where we have gone down even deeper, okay, and we are still in lower lows and lower highs on the daily time frame. And we are lower than the 200-week EMA, we're lower than the 50-week EMA, and we're now lower than the 50 simple moving average on the weekly time frame. But this does show us with some interesting things. If I continue to adjust our kind of forecast here based on our momentum, we can start to see our next area of interest for the next big run to the upside. Now, for Vechain, we actually want this to go as deep as possible in this correction. And the reason for that is it makes it easier to hit our impulsive trigger points so that we can have a more explosive bullish market. Okay, so when we start talking about Fibonacci levels, we start talking about, momentum and things like that, we really want this correction to actually go down as deep as possible. More towards 1.5 cent would be preferable, because it does mean that we would have a much easier time at coming up and hitting the 1.618 trigger point for an explosive bullish market, indicating thousands upon thousands of percent in gains. If we take the existing low at the moment, that trigger point is at 24 cent, but it could drop all the way down into a low of about 15.7. That trigger point could be really important to the future of Vechain VET token. So it's kind of the idea of take the pain now, because in the longer term, it would be very beneficial. Ultimately, I still think we can see really good significant gains on a macro scale. If I zoom out of this thing, you can really see how we did really well in the previous bullish market, great correction to the downside, and we're starting a very impulsive move to the upside. And if we can get this into an impulsive trigger point where we see a 5-wave movement to the upside, downside, well, we'll be in new all-time highs before you know it. So guys, you can let me know what your thoughts are on all of this in the comments down below. Do you agree? Do you disagree? What's your VeChain price prediction for this bullish market that is overdue? Let me know down below. And if you have found today's video useful, smash the like button. If you're new, subscribe. And if you haven't checked this video out, what are you doing? Give it a click and stay well informed.